This is the Pain Train Preston Quinn, one half of the Extreme Horsemen. And when I want to hear music and entertainment, I come right here. You're listening to On The Flythe with Stevie and Worden.
You are listening to On The Flythe.
What's up, guys? This week we're back. Now, last week we had Martin Terry on, and Martin had a good showing. I don't know if you guys have checked him out like we told you to, but Martin had a good showing last week when I went to the album release party. I think that's what they called it, album release party. He had a little bit better crowd the next night in Greenville, just because it was Friday night in Greenville, party town. So,
and you're the only one that had to work.
But Thursday night we went to Murfreesboro. So
yeah, but you couldn't go Friday night because you had to work the next day, right? So you're like the only one that had.
I wasn't going out. Greenville is like 45, maybe an hour away, so I couldn't do that. I had a ball game that night too. So yeah, we got the win, got the first win of the year.
Congrats, man!
58-6. So yeah, I was pretty happy. With me as always, and dressed to impress. He doesn't have everything he had on earth. I think his Dallas Cowboy underoos are dirty today or something like that, or he'd be wearing those. Y'all remember underoos? That was pretty. Everybody had to have them back then. I think I had Spider-Man.
I had the Darth Vader ones. That was cool.
Darth Vader. Anyway, tonight.
You don't like Darth Vader either? Man.
I do like Darth Vader.
Okay.
I took the high ground.
Too bad Anakin couldn't.
Yeah, Anakin couldn't. But what was that meme they had out there? Oh my gosh. I'll think of it later. Anyway, tonight On The Flythe does another movie review. I think this is number 2. We did number 3, because I'd actually done Teen Wolf before you came along.
Thank you. I'm glad I didn't have to go through that.
Teen Wolf was great, dude.
Dude, Teen Wolf was horrible, dude.
Worst editing I've seen in there was another movie I saw with really bad editing the other night. I can't remember what it was, but
who did the guy that filmed Pam and Tommy Lee film the same thing, man? It's the camera kept moving and like it wasn't good. And the second one was even worse, if that's possible.
Yeah, the second one was terrible. Jason Bateman, he was terrible in that.
And I like both guys.
I do.
Fox and
Tonight, our choice for the night, and this is one of my choices out of my top 10 list that Worden had never seen. And you guys talk about me never seen The Godfather before. First of all, I'm not Italian. I'm not from New York. But Worden, this movie here is North Dallas 40, and it's based on Peter Gent's time with the Dallas Cowboys. Now, being Worden is from Texas, number 1. Being a Cowboys fan, number 2, has never seen this movie. Never heard of it when we talked about it. I was like,
no, that's not true.
Oh, I thought
I had heard about it. I'd never seen it. I'll give you that. But dude, I was 7 freaking years old, man. I wasn't worshiping the devil with you and Kiss like you were.
I was 6.
I had a more conservative upbringing.
But I remember seeing this movie, and we'll get to that in a minute. First of all, let's talk about some stuff going on. And you want to start it off?
Yes, I'd like to, because I think what you got to talk about is a bit more important than what I had to talk about, which you probably think that happens every week. But, I I finished Steven Adler's book. I forgot what the name of it's called, but I have Audible.
Yeah, you finished it all right then.
I have Audible, and because I'm too old to read stuff to myself, so I need bedtime stories read to me.
Oh my God.
Audible. Steven Adler. I went into this book. It was a good book. He doesn't hold back. He tells a lot of stories. He tries to pretty much play the victim, and going into the story, hearing him on Eddie Trunk and different interviews, it's like, man, Axel did him wrong, and they did him wrong and stuff like that. But I read Duff and Slash's book. And I read Steven's book. Like I said, going into it, it's like, man, those guys are dicks. Excuse my French. But Steven Adler talks about all the stuff all the rehab he went through. The dude had a stroke and he kept using still.
Yep.
The dude shoved his mom when she's trying to help him. And he's still pissed at her for that. I see why they kicked him out of Guns N' Roses. Like I said, I felt bad for him. Like when they did the reunion, they didn't invite him back. I know why they didn't invite him back. I mean, it's kind of like the Ace Frehley, Peter Criss kind of thing. It's like, you're better. Yeah, it's not the original, but we've been there, done that. And I mean, it was a great book. Like I said, he didn't hold back, but he played the victim a lot in it.
Yeah.
But I would recommend it. I mean, I don't know if you would
come across it. I had to check it out.
Come across as the same deal, but I just used to feel, I went into this book thinking, man, poor dude, but man.
Yeah.
the guy's
amazing.
Yeah.
How something will change, your point of view that quick.
Well, it's like Duff and Slash kind of wanted him back, but Axl held the line. Axl was no, and he doesn't even. And one thing I was looking for, I don't think the story about Rocket Queen is right, that Axl was hooking up with his girlfriend, because knowing Steven, he would have talked about it. He didn't talk about it. About maybe
he was embarrassed.
I guess, but I mean I have never got. I mean, this is like the first time I've heard a guy's story, and it's like turned me off from him. It's like, yeah, no wonder Slash is a dick. No wonder Duff's a dick.
You're right. That's usually the case is when you read something like that, or you watch a documentary, you get more into that person. You feel like a bigger connection with that person. But yeah, this one turned you the other way, huh?
Yeah, it came out in 2009, and he sounds like he just kind of got clean. But I think Gilby Clarke was playing with him too, and Gilby Clarke got tired of his shit. A replacement got tired of his shit. But it was finally put on Audible in 2020, and I was like thinking, I'd like to hear another follow-up if he's better. Because I've seen him on that metal show with Eddie Trunk and stuff, and he looks like he's got his stuff together. But I mean,
maybe I hope so.
Yeah.
After you have a stroke and you still want to keep using that, you really got a problem then.
We had a stroke, and he had paralysis in his face.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember
he had chest pains, and he still did it.
I remember he was doing some interviews after that, and you could tell that stroke had affected, up here, because the way he was talking too. I mean, he always talked kind of with that accent, but the way he was talking, you could tell he had some paralysis up there.
Yeah, he screwed himself up because Guns N' Roses were a bunch of ugly bastards, but he was like the one good-looking dude in the band.
Yeah, and then he really messed up.
But I mean, I thought it was great. I know Guns N' Roses is, a lot of people think they're overrated. I love Appetite. I like the last two albums. Thought it could have been one, but when I saw them a couple years ago, I think it was 2017, before COVID. Who's that band that Tom from Shout Out Loud likes a lot? They just did an album review on them.
YT?
No, not White. That's Sonny. No, this is his.
Sevenfold.
Yeah, Avenged Sevenfold opened up for. No, that was Metallica. God, I'm getting no. Duh. ZZ Top opened for him. Forget it. But
Lord,
I see all the Aussie Guns N' Roses come out, and I think Duff McKagan is one of the coolest dudes to walk the earth. That dude is a freaking punk.
Joke of the week. Joke of the week on Jericho.
Yeah, that's great. I love that too. But he walks out, the way the dude dresses. I mean, I remember when I saw him on Metallica on that co-headline tour. I remember MTV. Who'd they come out with? Duff.
Yeah.
Duff, I don't know what he was saying back then because he was always drunk. But I mean, Duff McKagan, that's my favorite member. And
yeah, Duff is my favorite member of Guns N' Roses. And look, my second favorite is not, well, I'll go with Slash on my second, but my third favorite would be somebody not even an original, Matt Sorum. I loved when he played drums. Adler's replacement. I loved when he was the drummer for Guns N' Roses.
Yeah, and it's like what's his name? Izzy. It's like he just didn't want to put up with Axl's bullshit. I mean, that dude left a lot of money on the table because he didn't want to be around Axl.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
you get tired. I mean, and I can totally understand it. I mean,
I just reading this book and kind of listen. It's like, it's just I mean, I don't know how to describe it, but when Guns N' Roses came out, I think people our age get it, but man, they were just massive. They were like the last good hair. They were a hair band when they first came out, but they were so different, and they just, I mean, LA Guns is behind them by a long way, but man, that Appetite for Destruction, God, I mean, I hear Paradise City this day. I don't get tired of it. I love that album.
Oh no, most of the songs are off Appetite. There's no fatigue from, and some of them from Use Your Illusion. There's some fatigue, but
Use Your Illusion should have been like one album, and that would have probably been one of the greatest albums of all time. But they're another band that just, I mean,
they were on that roll, bud, and they wanted to do something monumental. They put Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 out at the same time, and then, I mean,
don't you remember
they were big.
I remember that when I'll get off Guns N' Roses after this, but they had these things before the internet called, they would like release the album at midnight. Do you remember those?
Yes.
And they released, I think they did with Metallica, the Black Album, and they did it with
Album,
1 and 2. And I remember my friends going to it, and we sit there, they were playing it, Sound Warehouse. I don't know if they had them up there.
No.
It's like a music land.
Oh, yeah.
They were sitting there playing it. It's like, oh, that's pretty cool. And you're thinking, oh, I'm going to get this one because you saw the track list. I'm going to get this one. And like, no, I ended up getting both. And I remember that night, this is how smart Sharon Osbourne is. That night, she also released, what's the one? No More Tears.
Yeah.
And they go, hey, you like Ozzy? And yeah. So I've been up buying 3 CDs that night and the big long boxes. And honestly, for the longest time, No More Tears, I liked it more than all of them.
Yep.
But
No More Tears is an awesome album.
But yeah, Guns N' Roses. And I didn't know that Steven Adler played drums on Civil War. I totally thought he was gone.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, he did. It was one of the
Civil War came out. That was an older song. Sense because that was an older song. I remember hearing that way before Use Your Illusion came out. Because that one was one that I'd heard, and I was like, okay, that's on the album. So yeah, that does make sense.
I was really surprised that Matt Sorum wasn't invited back for their union because he'd been in Velvet Revolver with Slash and Duff. So,
well, I mean, he was a big part of that success on Use Your Illusion too.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you this, and I don't know if it's still on YouTube or not. A fan made a documentary of the Use Your Illusion tour. And I mean, it's not up close video. It's like handheld from the audience cam, but of it, he went through all these. There's so many shows that Axl threw a fit and walked off stage and stayed off stage for a while and then came back. But there was how many, I couldn't tell you how many shows he did where he said, hold up, wait a minute. He'd stop in the middle of the song and talk trash to somebody.
He did in St. Louis, caused a riot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, then what was the show with Metallica where Hetfield got burned? That was in Canada, right? He caused that. He caused
Vancouver,
that
I think,
riot. Yeah. That riot there. So.
Yeah, you ever watched the Year and a Half of Metallica?
Yes, love it.
And how they're like, I mean, it's like everybody, even Slash and them, are pissed about Axl. I saw them in Houston on that tour, and Faith No More opened up, which was pretty cool. And it was at the Astrodome where the Oilers used to play in the Astros. And this is when they had the other guy from, was it Armored Saint that was playing guitar for them for Metallica?
Oh yeah, it was good. No, they had a guitar tech one time playing for.
No, they had a guy from Armored Saint or something.
They may have had him one time, but yeah, I know they had Hetfield's guitar tech was playing, and Hetfield would sing, but that guy was playing.
Did you see that where they had to, like, his hand was so swollen that it cut his rings off?
Yeah.
And I remember seeing that. I'm like, oh shit, the tour is over.
Yeah,
Metallica. But I'm a Metallica. They're my probably third favorite band in the world.
Yeah,
I'm a homer for Metallica. I thought they were better than Guns N' Roses but Axl came out. But one thing I do remember about Slash came out doing his solo. He played the Godfather intro. And I was like, oh crap, that was awesome. Yep. I didn't know that before the internet.
So there's something else you want to talk about too.
Oh yeah. Have you been keeping up what's going on in AEW?
Oh my God. Yeah.
I mean, MJF is back, which is great.
Awesome. I don't care. Listen, I don't care what anybody says.
He's a dick. I like him.
the CM Punk coming back was an awesome show when he came back that night. But the star of AEW right now, the one I want to hear because he's so daggum arrogant and he's so funny, is MJF. I mean,
let me ask you, you've watched wrestling as long as I have.
Yeah.
I remember the last time I quit believing anything wrestling wasn't scripted when Shawn Michaels, like when he was fighting Owen Hart and he collapsed.
Yeah.
I was like, holy crap. Cause I thought that was freaking real. Yeah. And I mean, do you think this will work? What's going on with Punk and the Young Bucks and all them?
I don't think it is.
Because it's like MJF, where's he been all this time? They automatically bring him back. I thought that was legit too.
Well, let me tell you this. You know, when Sports Illustrated is reporting on the suspensions, and I guess this Punk's friend, that Steel guy, he's gone. I've already heard that he's done. They're getting rid of him because I think he bit Kenny Omega, something like that.
Really?
I think that's what happened. Yeah, he bit him, and who else? They said Christopher Daniels. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
I know he's the bald guy.
They said he's part of the suspensions, and that was the first thing I'd heard that he had anything to do with it. But you know, when you Punk,
Kenny Omega, right? Kenny Omega.
Omega, the Young Bucks. I can't remember the Steel guy's first name. CM Punk, which they're saying now, and I don't know if this is right.
So CM Punk got suspended too?
Well, listen to what I'm saying now. Tonight, and they should be on right now, I guess. They're going to address that. If he doesn't get suspended, he's going to be out for a while because he got hurt in that match. He didn't get hurt backstage. They're saying he got hurt in that match with Moxley. So it is going to require surgery. So they're going to address the world title situation. And, you know, Jericho just sit back there like, what the heck is going on? What are these guys doing? I mean.
Well, you know who's laughing the most right now, don't you?
It's WWF, Triple H.
Triple H.
Yeah.
Because he's doing everything he accused Triple H of doing.
Yeah, exactly. Because Punk, as talented as he is, I've never really been that much of a CM Punk fan.
No.
And it's not wrestling-wise. It's his freaking attitude.
I read a joke that he punched somebody, but they said, "Don't worry, we saw him how he punched in UFC."
Yeah.
And see, that's I don't know. It's like when he's like one of those guys, like an Adler, Steven Adler. You know, everything's going right. Yeah, I'm happy.
Oh, it's great.
Man, when I can be the biggest crybaby in the world when things don't go right.
I don't know if what he was saying. Evidently, it wasn't a work. What he was saying in that press conference, because it must have got those guys. It got the Bucks and Kenny Omega, which I'm not a big Bucks fan either.
I like Kenny Omega, and I like Kenny Omega.
Super kick.
And who's that guy that Punk beat for the title? The Cowboy. I thought he was good.
Oh, Hangman.
And he was talking about how bad they were, and it was nothing wrong with Hangman.
You just put down your whole company.
Yeah.
And I mean, right beside your boss. So I mean, Tony Khan's in trouble because he doesn't have the experience of what a McMahon has. I mean, look what McMahon did with the Bret Hart thing. Look what he did with the Austin thing. This is going to happen when you have all that testosterone in the locker room. I hate it because I don't want to see the downfall of AEW, because I think it's made competition makes people better, makes things better. WWE, when there was no competition, it sucked. And since AEW's come along, well, you know, I'm going to say, and it's the truth. Triple H coming back. Triple H has got it pointed in the right direction. He had a little hiccup at the last pay-per-view, but
the Castle?
Yeah.
What happened?
They just didn't need to do the way they did things at the end in the title match. It was good till the ending.
I thought the part about the kid turning on Rey Mysterio and Edge was pretty cool.
That's been coming, though. That's been coming.
But who is that guy? Is he Eddie Guerrero's kid or Rey Mysterio's kid?
He's supposed to be Mysterio's kid.
But everybody laughs that it's Eddie's, right?
Because there was a storyline way back when he was like when Dominic was like 7 or 8 years old, maybe even somewhere around that. Eddie said that was his kid, and they had a whole match for the to be the father of Dominic or something like that. It was terrible. It was really bad. But yeah,
I don't know. It usually would be loser has to bang Vicky.
well, you saw they had a meme up there that Edge was saying it had a picture of when Dominic kicked him between the legs, and Edge was saying, "Why, Dominic? Why?" And it had a picture of Vicky with Eddie, 2 pictures of Vicky with Eddie, and one with Vicky and Edge. He said, "Cause you messed with my stepmother." So.
Didn't have an angle with those two? I probably quit watching about that time. Edge and Vicky, weren't they like together?
Oh yeah, he was gonna marry her and all this stuff. Yeah.
The Guerreros, man. I can remember like his dad down here in Southwest Championship Wrestling.
Chavo was one. Chavo Senior.
Chavo,
Mondo or something like that one.
Chavo Guerrero, I think, was the dad, and then had
and then they had a junior. Chavo Jr. And then
there was like his brother, like it was his older brother.
Was that Mondo?
I don't remember the name.
Oh,
but they were, I mean, they were as big as the Von Erichs down here for a while. I mean, Mexico side, Mexican wrestling.
Mando Guerrero. Mando, excuse me.
Yeah, there was a
They had another brother named Hector. You remember him?
Yeah. I think it was Hector. It was like he was out of town one time, and they had this guy that was a jobber, but he was a good bad guy. His name was Al Madrill. I don't know if you ever remember him.
Who?
Al Madrill.
Yes.
But they attacked his dad, and like, oh, they're going to be pissed next week when he come back, And of course, he went to go shake his hand, and they had a big feud there because it turned the guy good guy. But Al Madrill was he was a worker, and you'd see him like doing jobs for different people. But down here, he was a big star, kind of like Chris Adams, gentleman Chris Adams said. I remember seeing him like as a jobber, and that broke my heart because he was like one of my favorites growing up.
Hector, I don't know if you remember this. I don't know how much you watched Crockett back. You remember Lasertron?
Yeah.
Hector was Lasertron.
Oh, really?
And then when WWF, it was WWF back then, that one year where they had the Survivor Series where they had the freaking big egg and that freaking gobbledygooker came out, that was Hector too. So we were texting about, I watched that biography on Lex Luger. My God, Lex was, I had forgotten how favorite he was of mine and how he seems like a good dude now. But the guy, when he was doing that Lex Express, man, I wasn't into that. I liked the narcissist character. I thought that was cool. Total package was cool. But I remember looking at, and I remember back then I had my mullet. I go, man, I got everything on him. Got the mullet, just don't have the muscles. Yeah, Luger was, I remember reading about him in Pro Wrestling Illustrated about how he was the new guy. And he started in Florida.
Then I saw the picture with, was it Tully and JJ? They were down paying him a bunch of money. He's like, yep, they got him in the Horseman. And I remember I was in high school and they had that stuff and Lex was a Horseman and they were, after they kicked out Ole. And I remember the tension because your boy Arn was talking shit. He goes, last night, the Horseman, except on one part. And that's when Luger lost the U.S. title to Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then it was like, and then that's like, oh, they're going to turn. He's going to go after
Luger's
Flair.
Going babyface.
I felt bad for him, though. Did you see that part where Flair had already left with his belt that they didn't pay him for? And they put together that, was it like a United States championship with the world?
It was actually Dusty. All right. When Dusty left NWA the first time, there was a span of a few months before he went to WWF where he started his own his own wrestling federation in Florida, and he had that belt, and they just rigged it up that night. That's why you didn't see him put it on. He just carried it and he kind of hid it. But yeah, I remember at that time we went to a match in Richmond. And when we got there that night, Flair was supposed to be on the card. And when we got there, these guys were handing out, it's like a dirt sheet guy. Mm-hmm. He was handing out his stuff. He said, read why Flair has left WCW. And we were like, what? Because that was one of the things we were looking forward to, was seeing Flair. And, they were talking, it was a big buzz. I think he had just left too that weekend.
I never You tell me 5 years earlier would Flair be in WWE? No. I mean, it had to. It had to get that bad from the leave. He even says that.
Actually, I'll tell you this, and I've read this several times. I've heard Orrin talk about it. Flair considered when Orrin and Tully left. I think that was in '88. Flair actually considered going.
Yeah, but I mean, 4 or 5 years earlier, would you even think Flair?
Yeah, that was when he actually got there. It was 91, 92. So 4 years earlier.
He had a hell of a run too. He had a hell of a run.
He considered it then, but he
regretted leaving. He regretted
Crockett's
because when he went back, that's when they made him cut his hair and all that bullshit.
Well, no, they made him cut his hair before he left because Jim Hurd, the pizza man that was in charge then, that had no clue about wrestling, wanted Flair to.
No, Flair cut his hair after he got back from WWE, didn't he?
No, he cut it before he left.
No, because he still had the mullet in WWE.
Bet me.
Flair had his mullet. No, I'm talking about was like the Spartacus real cut short. That's when he got back.
That's what they wanted to call him. He cut that before he left.
No, he had his mullet in WWE, dude.
He let it grow back out, dude.
Okay, I guess you're right. I mean, you may be right.
Halloween Havoc.
No, I agree.
Halloween Havoc.
I believe you.
No, Starrcade, 1990. He was a Black Scorpion.
I'm not gonna argue with NWA with you, brother. I mean, it's like that's your hometown.
So, yeah, we can get off. We can talk wrestling,
but just figure Luger. It's good to see him. I mean, it sucks what he went through.
Oh yeah, but
that's probably going to be one of my next books I'm going to read. But I mean, for every person that really called him a dick, you had somebody like Goldberg. You had somebody like
Sting,
Nash. How weird was that to see them on TBN? Nikita, Sting, and Luger.
Yep.
I was like, man, they need to like.
They also had look. There was one time they didn't show up, but the Road Warriors. Hulk got saved, and I don't think it was live, but he did his testimony, I think, on TBN one night.
Hulk was, man, clean and sober, and it's like another Andy Gibb. His heart just gave out, man.
Yeah. Speaking of that,
I want to say one more thing about wrestling.
Go ahead.
Zeus. What was Zeus when we were doing the Eagles was talking about how? What did Glenn Fry say about Don Henley?
Yeah,
that he can suck the energy out of a room.
Yeah.
If there is anybody that's a Don Henley of wrestling, it's Bret Hart. My God,
yeah, I'll go.
He always has something negative to say.
Gosh, no.
Like he'll sit there and I mean, my God, I mean,
Debbie Downer of wrestling right there.
That's it, man. I thought about that.
You mentioned Andy Gibb. Future episode, I got this in the mail about a week ago. Guy on Twitter that I friended on Twitter. We talked back and forth a lot. Matthew Hill, the biography of Andy Gibb. So we will definitely get with Matthew and have him on and talk about that after I get through reading.
He's going to read it, then he's going to send it to me to read. So it's going to be about a year from now. I'm just kidding.
Might be. Before we get to the main event, I do want to talk about one more thing before we. Of course, we all know if you're a rock fan or music fan, Taylor Hawkins passing away earlier this year. Foo Fighters drummer, and there was a tribute show this past weekend, and I mean it had some incredible guys. How about Joe Walsh,
McCartney?
Yeah, but the highlight to me, the whole thing was Taylor Hawkins' 16-year-old son getting up there and playing the drums to My Hero, and killed it. If you haven't seen the footage, it's on the fly. I'm sure it's on all things rock, hard rock and metal. I'm sure you
there's a lot of posts on that there.
But he
enjoyed that.
He played the solo with a broken stick, and you couldn't tell it. The guy kicked butt. He's definitely following in his father's footsteps as far as drumming goes. Let's hope. But yeah, what was it? What was that song that they sang the other night that Grohl had such a hard time with it?
Oh, Times Like These.
Times Like These, yeah. And if you didn't get emotional with that, because Dave Grohl is one of my favorite guys in music, favorite guys all around.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
He is a good dude. he's dealt with a lot in his career as far as losing people. I mean, you lose Kurt Cobain, your lead singer, while you're a drummer, and now that you're the lead singer, you lose your drummer and probably one of his best friends, if not his best friend, Taylor Hawkins. So he's gone through a lot, and to see the look on his face though when he looked back at Taylor Hawkins' son, and to see the pride in his face, yeah, that was pretty awesome. That was probably one of the great moments I've seen in music right there. But great job. I can't remember his son's name, but he did a great job.
You kind of think about the life that Grohl's lived. I mean, there's not too many our age. I mean, you don't have a Paul McCartney.
No.
I mean, you don't have God, Robert Plant. You're not going to have those when in another 20 years when we're in our 70s, I guess, not 60s. But I mean, Lane Staley's gone, Scott Weiland. I mean, you think about all the loss that he's seen, and it's just, Kurt Cobain.
Yep.
I wasn't the biggest Nirvana fan, but the guy's an icon. He's an icon.
But can you imagine how he felt when that happened? Not just that you're a guy that you're friends with and you've been pretty much living with for however many years they were together.
Talking about Taylor, or are you talking about Kurt?
Kurt. I mean, the first one had to be really. But I'm sure Taylor was probably worse.
Yeah, but Kurt, you saw coming. Taylor, I didn't see coming.
I didn't see that coming. Well, that was
Kurt
was a suicide. I mean, Taylor was different.
That's another show we can get into.
Well, it was suicide, we'll say.
That Kurt didn't. Kurt, it shocked me, but it after I was thinking about it, I was like, the guy. A few weeks later, he had overdosed on stuff.
Yeah.
Taylor was. He was older. He was 50. He was like twice Kurt's age.
Yeah.
Kurt was like 27. He was 50 something, and he had a family. But it's just the demons, bro. It's
yeah. Oh yeah.
That stuff's got you, man.
But yeah, great. That whole show was so great. If you haven't had a chance to look at the clips, look it up online, or you can find it on our Facebook pages.
And if you believe in an afterlife, he's got to be looking down. God, who's
yeah,
Geddy Lee, Paul McCartney. Some of those. It was crazy.
And and the thing is, there was a lot of them music artists he's affected so much that weren't even there. Like the girls from Heart. He was good friends with both of those.
Yeah, Nancy.
I was totally expecting one of them to be there, but they weren't.
They're on tour.
But yeah, just a great show there, and a great tribute to Taylor Hawkins. So
there's was the thing that they say in the Shawshank Redemption, or no, Wonderful Life. No man is poor who has friends, or something like that.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. So, main event tonight. One of my favorite movies of all time. From 1979, North Dallas 40. And it's a 1979 American sports film starring Nick Nolte, Mac Davis, and G.D. Spradlin, set in the decadent world of American professional football in the late 70s. Directed by Ted Kotcheff and based on the best-selling 1973 novel by Peter Gent, who was a Cowboys player.
He was in college too, but he didn't play a lick of it in college. He just been the pros.
You think they kind of exaggerated some of the stuff?
Well,
I'm talking about with. Okay, so let's get it out here. Mac Davis. This was his debut, action debut. He's a country music singer. So this was his debut. Mac Davis is based on Don Meredith, Dandy Don. So Phil Elliott, who is played by Nick Nolte, is based on Peter Gent. And then G.D. Spradlin plays
Landry.
Yeah, Landry pretty much. You think they kind of exaggerated Landry at the end, saying you got the best hands in football to this guy?
I think when I've read a lot of cowboy books. You can probably know that. And I for the most of them, I always hear that Tom Landry would be reading you a Psalms out of the Bible and cutting you at the same time. That he was he was cold. He didn't really have. I don't know the guy, But
Not
I
really.
mean, yeah, that he would sit there and quote Jesus to you, but he's firing at the same time. I mean,
Yeah, I bet.
he was business. I mean, he was probably like a Belichick maybe.
Peter Gent, looking him up, looking at him right now.
You're talking about exaggeration. Evidently, after seeing the movie, Meredith said, "Well, hell, if I knew that Gent caught that well, as it says in the
I'd
movie,
have thrown
I
it
would have
to him
thrown
more.
to him more." I can
Have
hear
you?
Don Lemon saying that.
I don't know
They
if you
were
ever
good
heard
friends.
this. I don't know if you've ever heard the story, but there were after this came out, and Gent apparently may have had a drinking problem. I don't know, but he was drunk one night and was nearby where Monday Night Football was going on, and Don Meredith was, of course, doing the play-by-play, and said Gent crawled into the to the booth with him. And Meredith was like, they were trying to kick him out. And Meredith's like, okay, it's okay. I'll take care of this. But yeah, I've heard that somewhere, and I can't remember where I've heard it from. But
there's alcohol involved, dude. Anything can happen, especially in the 70s, 80s, I guess.
So he died. Peter Gent died in 2011. He was from a pulmonary disease. He wrote two other books, and I don't know if you looked at. I've never read the book. I would be interested to read the book because there's a lot of differences in the book than it is the movie.
Yeah, supposedly at the end, the girl he gets back with, she evidently has another lover.
Yeah, and they're dead.
Yeah, they're dead or something. Yeah, something like that.
Because one of her like exes is stalking them through the whole movie. But
he also wrote a follow-up to it too, did he?
He wrote two unrelated football novels, Texas Celebrity Turkey Trot and The Franchise. Then he wrote a novel about college basketball called The Conquering Heroes. It's Bill Walton calls it the North Dallas 40 of college basketball, but it's much more about a whole generation of kids who came to age in America that I grew up in. But he was actually, at the time of his death, working on another novel. So
I think he wrote a sequel to North Dallas 40 in 89, I think so.
It doesn't say anything.
That's what I read. But it of course didn't get. So
yeah, I've never heard
is this where the Breakfast of Champions came from? Because is that where it first came from? So I'm serious. It's a good question.
I don't know.
Because that's a long time ago, and I mean,
yeah,
they're sitting there drinking Budweiser and taking pills.
Yeah,
but boy, I bet. How glad do you think the NFL was to see that?
Oh my God! Can you imagine Pete Rozelle back then when this movie came out, going like, "Oh my gosh, we got to do damage control."
But I mean, a lot of it. I mean, it pretty much showed you. I mean, how bad it is. I mean,
yeah.
That poor guy running with a hamstring. I mean, it's like, I can't feel it. He didn't want to do it, but he had no choice but to keep his job.
Yeah.
And this is something that, there's two words that players back then would have loved to hear: free agency.
Yep.
Because in this, the team had all the power. Like they, at the end, what they do to Nick Nolte, they set him up and they did him wrong. And they were trying to find an excuse to get rid of him, and they got their wish. I won't spoil anymore, but that's, I mean, it, and hell, and Mac just was like, "It ain't gonna mess me up, is it? It ain't gonna mess me up, is it? Well, bye." I mean, the start of the movie, Nick Nolte wakes up barely able to move.
Yeah, that opening scene after he's played the night before, and he gets up. He gets waked up by his alarm clock, and he's struggling, but he's having flashbacks to the night before the game and some of the hits he took, and guy pulling him by his face mask. And they said Nolte actually trained before this for like weeks with NFL players, so it would look realistic. But to look at that and see what they go through, and he's of course he's getting up, taking the stuff all through the movie. The thing that stuck out, and I think they tried to really push this, was how bad it was on these players, how the wear and tear on them. The part where he's with that woman, he was at her house, and he gets up in the middle of the night because he's hurt so bad, and you see it, she's watching him without him knowing, and he's just cracking. Everything's cracking, and he takes another pill and then gets back into bed. You see a lot of that. throughout this whole movie. You see the needles, like you said, Delma, they were running back that they pretty much, he tries to stay away from the needles, but they pretty much, they don't force him, but they encourage it to where they're actually forcing him without.
Yeah, they give you
forcing.
They give you a lot of shit if you're not playing, if you're not showing up. You can always be replaced.
Yeah. And when he actually does it, it ends up costing him. I mean, he takes a heck of a hit and does some facial damage at the end. But, some of the stuff I'm writing down at that starting where you're having this moment with him and he gets in the tub and he's thinking about the night before. And then all of a sudden you see these two freaking giants come through the door, bust through. I mean, think about that. Joe Bob Pretty
shooting at the cows
and O.W. Shattuck. They come busting through, the two offensive linemen for the North Dallas Bulls. They come through and they're talking trash. And they go out. Mac Davis, I'll tell you this, for that being his first time, does a great job. He does a great job. One of my favorite roles he's ever done. But they go out. This is a day off for him. They go out. Mac Davis is driving him and Nick Nolte around, and Joe Bob and OW are sitting on the hood of the car shooting at freaking cows. And, here you hear that Joe Bob, see that cow over there? You want to see him run? And takes a shot again. And then, because they have some, and of course, Mac Davis and Nick Nolte have some talking back and forth about, one of the things that you find out early on about Nick Nolte's character, which is Phil Elliott, is the reason he's not getting more playing time is because he's not playing along with the system. And you hear that from Mac Davis early that you need to play with the system like I do. You don't have to like it or anything like that, but you need to listen to what they say. And he said, if you didn't have such a great set of hands, I'd let you sit on the bench and rot if I didn't like you so much. And you find that out later on. You see it more with the Landry character that G.D. Spradlin plays. But did you notice when they go to this freaking party, the guy that's busting his knuckles up? You remember him?
Vaguely.
Okay, the guy, he's got one of his teammates over there with a stewardess dancing, and he's talking about how he got to like second base with her because he showed her a bruise on his hip. So this guy's over there taking his knuckles and just beating till he's got bloody knuckles. And so he said, she'll give me the whole thing if I show her this. You know who that was, right?
Mm-mm.
You ever watch In the Heat of the Night?
With Archie Bunker?
Yeah, I think that was Bubba.
Oh, the big dude?
Yeah, Alan Autry is his name.
Okay.
But yeah, so you see that, and that's one of the stupidest scenes the whole movie. He goes over there to the stewardess. She starts making out with him. They get in a fight, and then all of a sudden they make up. They kiss each other and make up. The two guys. So, but the party
I was still thinking about how he grabbed that girl and told him how much he wanted to F her, and they lifted her up.
And
the
that's
other
another
girl.
thing. Can you imagine, and it may go on nowadays, but can you imagine if people had cell phones back then, how much trouble these guys would be in? Because there'll be
a lot of rock stars in prison right now if there were cell phones back then.
Joe Bob had one lady over his head. And I mean, and just like Phil Elliott was saying to that Charlotte, it will tell me something here. It's just like he said too. Why was she at that party?
Yeah, right. She wanted to see how the other half lived.
She didn't fit any part of that. You never had an explanation to what brought her to that party.
I got kind of confused because he was banging that other girl.
Oh yeah,
but he was into this one, and I guess that was Dabney Coleman's, I guess, wife, right?
Fiance, I think.
Fiance, and that's why they did to him at the end.
Doing some reading, and I didn't know this, but the reason they said the reason that she was hooking up that Dabney Coleman's
because he was gay.
Yeah. Because he was gay, and he wanted to have a show wife because he was in that big company. You know what I'm saying? Because back then it was frowned upon a lot. So
yeah, and you talk about people freaking out about how things are going. Can you imagine them going around and shooting at a bunch of cows today? My God, people get pissed about that too.
Yes,
I gotta admit, I didn't like that part because I like animals a lot more than I do people. And it's leave poor cows alone, man.
It's like Mac Davis said, hell, they're too drunk to hit anything.
Right.
So, and then what about the part where Mac Davis is coming up and he said, "There's a bird," and he shoots right over top of his head. Oh my gosh. Joe Bob was something.
There's one thing about kind of about the 70s. It's like back then, like guys that were hairy, man, they just let it all hang out, like the hairy back, everything. I kid you not. The other day, after I watched this on, like, I know it was a Saturday, I watched it. Well, I had to go out. I wanted to go to the store, and there was a guy out there jogging, no shirt on, about as hairy as that guy that was in the locker room. I'm going, dude, it ain't the 70s anymore, brother. Cover that crap up. Yeah, you're sitting there watching it, and you see a bunch of bare ass hairy backs. Like, yeah, that's what I want to see.
So, Charlotte, like that scene you talk about, Charlotte is trying to leave, and Joe Bob has already spotted her and tells her what he wants to do to her and all that. So you can tell Phil's kind of into her because she's different. And he goes over there to try to get her away, and Joe Bob puts the clamp down on him and starts choking. Oh my God! There's so many things that would be all over TMZ or all over something that happens in this movie. I don't know how exaggerated. I pretty much think this stuff went on back in that day.
It still does, Stevie. We still hear about it.
Probably. And like I said, Mac Davis, he, like I said, his first role, but I will always think of Mac Davis as Seth. I don't care what else he's played in, but Seth Maxwell that was a freaking awesome character.
What movie is that from?
Huh?
What movie is that from?
That's what he was called in North Dallas 40.
Oh, Seth.
I
think Don Meredith, man. I'm not good with names. I tell you.
I know. They couldn't use Don.
I've seen it one time, Stevie. One time.
I got you. But there's also a rumor that Gent wanted Don Meredith to actually play Seth Maxwell.
Right. They couldn't afford Don Meredith back then.
So I think he turned it down.
Because didn't Don Meredith retired pretty early because he just walked away because he was tired of the game.
Yeah. But
that was I was reading up and doing research on this, Stevie, and I was going to give you a bunch of hell and go, yeah, you know what? It came out in 79 and the Cowboys won, but no, Steelers won. So I let that one away. So I look, okay, it was the year before. Nope, Steelers won that one too.
So
year before that, though. Okay.
Yeah, come on. So here's another thing that kind of makes me wonder. Okay, so Charlotte gets away while Joe Bob's choking out Phil. And Phil has his little talk with Seth out the pool, and he kind of sees somebody watching him, and that figures in later in the movie. But how does he find Charlotte's house? You notice that? He went to Charlotte's house that night after he left the party. And I'm thinking it's not too early in the night when he gets there, but this guy you just met at a party comes knocking on your door late at night, and you let him in, and he ends up falling asleep on your couch. And first of all, don't let him in. Second of all, if he said he kept saying, "I'm just so tired, I just need to rest for a minute," she was like, "You need to get up and get out of here." But so Charlotte was kind of a strange. I still can't figure out how he knew where her house was.
I personally don't think the movie needed her. I mean, she didn't really. She's one of those useless characters I don't think really provided anything. I mean, if she would have found her at the end of the movie dead, yeah, But I mean, I didn't think because I was that kind of, you're right. I kind of confused me as like, well, he's banging this other girl, but I didn't think he banged Charlotte, did he? So
I think he did.
Did he? I don't know.
I mean, they didn't show it or anything.
I
like
know,
that, but he
they
was
showed him banging the other one though.
Yeah, they showed her. Yeah, but so he's all excited about it, and he talks to Seth about that at the party, that he's got a meeting with B.A. Strothers, who is none other than Tom Landry.
And his computer.
Yeah, and his computer, his 1979 computer that, what the heck? That's what the computer says. Computer says all comes down to your attitude. And I'm like, oh, freaking gosh. But yeah, and the first thing I remember the first time I watched this movie and seeing his character, I'm like, what a dick. I mean, he was a class A. I don't know if Tom Landry was like that to his players, but or Peter Gent's exaggerating, but yeah.
He's pretty cool.
BA was a butthead.
That guy that played him, he was in The Godfather Part 2.
Yeah,
he plays a congressman that gets in some trouble, and he's
Sprazzin.
Yeah, he was pretty sleazy in that show too.
He's always playing the sleazy parts. But
it's funny. I went and saw The Godfather this weekend, that special.
Yeah, the $3.
And I was watching this one, and I was like, was that guy still alive? Is that guy still alive? I mean,
he was in, what was that other movie? You remember that movie? Gosh, what's his name? Played on the Rockford Files.
James Garner.
Tank. C. Thomas Howell. Remember that movie Tank back in the 80s? He played an evil sheriff. You have to go look it up. It was.
No, I'll take your word for it.
What's her name? She played on. She was the in between from Chrissy to Terry on Three's Company. Tanya something. Terry. She was in there. Yeah, she was in there, and she was. I'll just say it was cold outside all the time. But yeah.
Oh,
she played a hooker.
Cindy.
Yeah.
Cindy. She was on her name. She was on Dallas too for a while.
Yeah.
I remember that.
So.
Oh, okay. Terry or Chrissy? Terry for me.
That's a tough one, dude.
Terry. I mean, she was so underappreciated. She was
hot. Chrissy was hot.
But Terry,
about Chrissy, the only thing, the difference there is she was so ditzy. Chrissy was so ditzy. Yeah, so I might have to.
She was pretty funny though.
She was funny.
But Suzanne Summers, man, she was funny.
Yeah. So, he goes out of the meeting with BA upset again because he's not playing into their system.
What? Okay. What exactly is their system? What is he doing?
Whatever that computer freaking said, but they're saying his attitude was wrong. But the thing
immaturity. That's right. You're
immaturity. But here's the thing: I don't think he did anything any different than what Seth did. Yeah. I mean, but Don Meredith was up here. Peter Gent was an undrafted guy. Don Meredith was not. So that was the big difference there. That's why at the end you see, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes.
Okay. This is probably why I was never really a jocker. I mean, I like to watch sports, but of course I'm not like you. Like, I'm not an aficionado. I mean, I know about my teams. I know what I like.
Right.
But I remember growing up an only child, and one of the biggest reasons I didn't play sports because I didn't like showering with other dudes. And people laugh at me for that.
I didn't ever do that.
In Texas, big school and everything.
Yeah.
I'd never wanted to do that. And I remember people telling me that's it. But I'd always kind of like, okay, Dazed and Confused.
Yeah.
And that's what this movie was kind of like. Why is he not going? He's immature. I don't see him doing anything any different. Okay, Dazed and Confused, they were on that quarterback for doing that pledge not to do drugs or alcohol.
Right.
I get that. That's what the coach wanted. But it's like, I guess I don't have that jock mentality of not. I mean, the dude was putting his body on the line. I would think he's giving it up already. That's what I kind of was like. That's why I'd ask you, because like, what's he not doing right?
Yeah, I think it was that. What it was basically what it came down to was he was not the superstar that, just like OW and Joe Bob, he was not that superstar like they were.
Always
So,
thought he could do more.
yeah. But if he was one of those, they would never said anything to him.
Yeah. Okay.
And then
I'm real curious though if that's where Breakfast and Champions came from.
I don't know if that's fake, but
Because Wheaties, or maybe Wheaties was before that, and that's where they got it from.
I think Wheaties was before that. Probably. Yeah, but he ends up running into Joanne, who is Emmett Hunter's fiance, like we talked about, and he has a little rendezvous with her, and that figures into this later on. So he's kind of, and I think that must have been going on for a while. And I think he was just into it, and he
was into it all right.
I think after that conversation they had though on the outside, he was kind of like, she's gonna marry him anyway, and I've got Charlotte, so I think he was kind of like, okay, that's gonna be it for this for us. But until the next time he wanted a booty call, but John Matuszek, he plays O.W. Shattuck, former Oakland Raider, and I bet you don't know what else he plays because you haven't seen this movie either, huh?
Skin Flute?
No, he played Sloth on the Goonies. Remember him?
Never saw.
Hey, you guys!
Never saw the Goonies.
Oh,
I'm telling you, Steve, I was a sheltered child, brother.
Oh my gosh! Never saw the Goonies, dude. Nope. Mallory will probably come in here in a minute and say, "What?"
You never saw Godfather, so it's just where you're at in your life.
I'm not going to argue. It's just.
I mean, it's just. When back in those days, I didn't want to see kids my own age. I want to see Schwarzenegger blow something up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Goonies was good.
Because usually in Schwarzenegger movies, there's boobs. So, hey.
Matuszek plays O.W. Shattuck, and he has a big role at the end. But him and Joe Bob, they work so well together. And you remember Joe Bob was
in Walking Tall.
Yes. I was going to say he was in Walking Tall. Yes. So, yeah, big difference between Joe Bob and in here and Walking Tall. So then you get
he's still alive too.
Oh yeah, yeah. Matuszek's passed away, but Joe.
Yeah, there's a lot of them are dead. So
yeah, you don't hear anything from Nick Nolte anymore. I wonder how Nick Nolte is. I know Mac Davis has passed away, but I wonder how Nolte is.
I remember the last I heard about Nick Nolte was in that car chase for the cops.
Yes. And that's been a while.
He had a hell of a run though, man.
He did.
He had a good
48
career.
hours and
another 48 hours.
Yeah.
He had a good run.
See, I'm gonna look up and see if they got anything like Nolte would be 81 years old. He's 81 years old now.
Jim Bob's that age too. They're the same age.
He's been married once, twice, 3 times a lady. Yeah. So doesn't really say legal troubles. No, 2018 he did an interview, but that's the last thing you see up here about him. His last role, he's actually what? He did Last Words, a movie in 2020, and his character was Shakespeare. And he's got 3 movies that are to be announced: Eugene the Marine, Blackout, and Rittenhouse Square. So
Eugene the Marine?
Yeah.
He's still working, huh?
So he's still working. But then in the next scene you see, they're watching game film. And this Coach Johnson, who's played by Charles Durnan, is one of my favorite characters in the whole movie. First thing he does, the rookie Douglas is sitting there with his hand over his face, asleep. And that coach takes a freaking eraser and throws it across the room, hits him in the head. And his big thing is he will fine people for anything. I'm warning you, Douglas. You fall asleep again, it's a $500 fine. But then you got when they start watching the game film, and of course, BA is given. He pisses Mac Davis off, talking about this buddy stuff. You got a wide open guy over here, but you're throwing the field down here. I don't like this buddy stuff interfering with your judgment. And he kind of gives him a little stare. They have a stare down. But then there's a play where the offensive lineman does a little flip, misses the guy completely, does a little somersault, and then this guy, they called him Stallings. He was actually one of Peter Gent. The guy that played him in the movie he was actually one of Peter Gent's teammates on the Cowboys. But you see how quickly they will get rid of somebody for making a mistake. He makes that one mistake, and obviously he was doing something right because he was a starter. But he makes that one mistake, and you look, the next thing you see after he tells him everybody can go except you, I want to talk to you privately. And you look, and they're taking his nameplate off his locker. So that quick. And at that point of the season, that's kind of unbelievable to me, though. At that point of the season, there's so many things wrong with that part, with what they were saying about that part, because they're playing for the conference championship against Chicago. And they're saying this is it. You know, the announcers are saying at the end of that game, this is their season right here. But then, if you notice at the end when, you know, Phil comes out of that meeting with the Hunters and he quits, he tells Seth, good luck on Sunday. So they're obviously playing again. So I don't know what was going on there, but
I thought that was an elimination game.
That's what I'm saying. But you go back and watch it again, watch that last part. That was an elimination game.
I thought that was the whole reason they missed. They missed the field goal.
Yeah.
I mean, what better team than Dallas to put that on? Tony Romo holding the ball for Seattle.
Was that a precursor? That's in my list. Is that a precursor to Tony Romo?
Yeah.
Peter Gent predicting the future. But yeah, I mean, because you go back and watch it, they say all that during the game, but then after it's over, he has that meeting and he's talking to Mac Davis. He says, "Good luck on Sunday." And I mean, it's like, I don't know. That's kind of confusing. We'll have to, if Peter Gent was still here, we would have to ask him.
We had a Ouija board. We can try to summon him if you want.
Yeah, we could do that. But so this G.D. Spradlin we talked about, he's the one that plays BA. His voice kills me. And he gets in that film review, and he's talking about when Elliott makes the game-winning catch, and they show it, and you can hear Mac Davis and Nick Nolte talking back and forth. This is where you screwed up. You called the wrong play. I didn't call the wrong play. You sent in the wrong play. Whatever. And here it comes. And he's like, of course, BA says, Elliott, how would you describe this play? And Elliott says, well, I'd say we scored a touchdown. And, you know, then everybody starts laughing, and BA goes off on everybody and starts bringing out stats and what the computer says again. And, but you won the game. Give it a freaking rest. You won the game. Yeah.
There are a lot of coaches like that, Stevie.
Yeah. So then they show this Hartman character, which I think is based on Roger Staubach. He's a goody two-shoes. And, I mean, nothing wrong with being a Christian. I'm a Christian and all this stuff, and that's another – we don't want to get into that too much, like I said. But he is one of those guys that is just so goody two-shoes, and Mac Davis's character cannot stand him. He's like, "What? How am I supposed to compete with this guy?" And, you know, they're showing him in practice, and he's all peppy and all team spirit and all this stuff. But when they get to call him to play, and he calls like 10 audibles, and you see Joe Bob finally just stand up and look at him, and that Coach Johnson, would you just call the freaking play? You're giving me a freaking headache. And all right, bunch of high school, but I
remember the guy now, but his character was just so minuscule. I was like,
who Hartman?
Whoever Starbuck was supposed to be. Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't remember it. Now that you mentioned that, okay, I remember that now.
Don't you remember he had to lie to his wife about where he was the night before because he didn't call her?
Oh, that's right. That's
yeah.
right.
How could you forget that when the host? We can't get into that story about what happened at Mac Day, but I'm telling you, if you guys want to watch this movie, it's a great movie. But one of the best scenes, and I'm not going to get into that conversation he had with Nick Nolte about what happened that night before, but that's a great story he tells about Hartman was shot to, and what happened after that. But so Delmer, we're introduced to Delmer, and he's a running back, and I don't know if he was based on anybody. I've never heard if he was based on anybody or not. The only
Bob Hayes. No, just kidding.
No, I don't think so. But Delmer is one of those guys that he can't stand needles. He's watching Nick Nolte get a needle.
I love needles.
Put in his knee, and
what Nick Nolte say? I love needles.
He's getting a B12 shot. There's a key here. One of the funniest scenes of the whole movie. And Delmer's watching. He's like, "Oh no, I can't do that to my body and all this stuff." And then all of a sudden, here comes Joe Bob, suit and tie, briefcase. Joe Bob's up there. He said, "Once you get through with Butterfingers here, will you give me my B12 shot because I got an important business meeting." And then he starts talking to Elliot, which is a mistake because he knows he's going to get made fun of. He said, talking about he's going to have a chain of restaurants called. And he said, "Oh, yeah, what's the name going to be?" And Joe Bob's like, "Joe Bob's Fine Foods." He said, "You like it? That's right." And Phil Elliott, of course, said, "Joe Bob's Fine Foods. Eat here or I'll kill you." And Joe Bob goes chasing around, trying to choke him out again, and said, "What did that trainer say? Too much B12." Evidently, B12 was what everybody wanted back then.
That's just another name for it, Stevie.
Yeah, exactly. That was one of the things that when you look it up, let me see if I can find it again.
Roid Rage, maybe?
The name of the substance that Joe Bob Pretty is injected with was, and has in quotation marks, B12. So, yeah, that was a little different. And then Joe Bob, you kind of see a little rivalry going with this Monroe character. I don't know if you remember him or not. The defensive lineman, big dude. And him and Delmer are trying to separate Joe Bob from it. And Joe Bob said, "It always did take two of you to handle one of me." I'm like, oh, crap. But then Phil goes home. His house is being broke into while he's there. The guy's there and pops it on and tells him, "Don't move, asshole." And this guy figures in later on again, too. Okay, he's being followed. His house has been broken into. And this figures in later on at the end. Then your favorite part, the Breakfast of Champions, comes up. Seth and Phil in the training room. Seth is passed out in the training room. Apparently spent the night there or something. And he is met with a jock around the face. He's woken up with a jock around his face by Phil. But breaking into the medicine cabinet, the trainer's medicine cabinet, how many different pills did those guys take? And I mean, they would take them like candy, codeine. I forgot what else was named off, but yeah. Can you imagine? I mean,
it happened. You know it did.
Oh yeah, it had to happen because they were putting their. I mean, as much as they're looked after so much today, as far as the injuries and stuff. Back then, they didn't care. You know, you didn't have a right. They were paying you.
Yeah, because they owned you, and there was no such thing as free agency.
No. And one of the great lines that I've used several times, Mac Davis used, "If I had a dog with a face like yours, I'd shave his butt, make him walk backwards." So yeah. And then Eddie, the trainer, comes in, and they're in the whirlpool, and he's like,
"Don't piss in the whirlpool."
Yeah, Elliot, don't you piss in there. And you see Nick Nolte like, bastard.
it's funny. I remember when I was younger, and I was always a Bud Light guy. And I remember one time I was playing softball. I was in my 30s, probably early 30s, and they didn't have any Bud Light, so we drank Budweiser. Hell, you talk about a beer strong enough by itself without all those drugs.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
I
some
didn't
strong
even mention
stuff.
that.
Yeah.
They're taking these pills and washing them down with Budweiser. So I mean,
Budweiser, not
yeah.
Bud Light, Budweiser.
Yeah. So then Seth tells this story about Hartman, which we're not going to be able to get into. But one of the lines, another good line from Mac Davis was Hartman was flopping around like a one-legged cat trying to bury shit on a frozen pond. I mean, come on, dude. Where does this guy get them from? And then the Breakfast of Champions, and they're training. It shows all these guys going through their training and lifting weights and all this, and then flash to Mac Davis. He's got a dumbbell in his hand,
cigarette
in this hand, a beer in the other hand, and he's just doing like this. He turned the beer up, then do this, and then Elliot's over there doing nothing but smoking a cigarette, blowing smoke rings. So, yeah, that's great training there. But
it's probably why they lost those last 2 Super Bowls to the Steelers.
Might be. Then the locker room. You show the locker room, and you get the butt shots of these guys and
Harry back.
Yeah, the hairy back dude. Yeah, but Hartman comes in and says, Hartman comes in while they're training and said, "Did I call my wife last night?" And Mac Davis like, "I don't think you did, bud." And he said, "Oh God, what I'm gonna do?" He said, "Just lie to her." He said, "A guy like you, I would believe it." And then he comes back in. He's like, "She believed me." And then Mac Davis messes him up and says, "That's good, bud. Sometimes lying can be the best thing in a relationship." Of course, Hartman is.
Yeah, it messed him up. Yeah.
And Phil Elliott throws him a thing of Vaseline and says, "Welcome to the big leagues, Hartman." So, so they have let's see. I talked about Phil waking up at Charlotte's house, and she sees him in there just cracking his whole body. I mean, just like Mac Davis said earlier in the movie, he said, "You're the only person I know that's got a body worse than me." And the things they put their body through, dude. And it's just like he said, John. He's like, "John Henry, why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we abuse ourselves?" But, it's what it was back then, bud. They didn't care. Like we said, we didn't care. Team meeting. Coach Johnson comes out. He's got a poem to read that he found back when he was playing. And difference between good and great is that much. And Mac Davis said that's the same size as his. Yeah. So. And Joe Bob and OW are being sarcastic. They want some copies of that poem. And there's a big thing, another thing with Monroe again, where Joe Bob is listening to Delmore every time a verse of the poem is read. Delmore's over there going, "Right." And then he finally gets upset. And he said, "This ain't exactly no reviving meeting," talking about that. And then they kind of look at each other, and he said, "You want something with me, Monroe?" They go to practice. And Coach Johnson tells Monroe where they're going half speed. He said, "You do it full speed." And he ticks off Joe Bob, and they're talking trash to each other. And finally they start fighting. And then you see the scene where Nick Nolte's character is actually watching the fight. And then he looks and sees B.A. come down from his little perch. And he's smiling, watching them, and Coach Johnson is sitting there smiling, watching them, like they wanted this to happen.
Of course they did.
Yeah, they wanted to see, and the owners that are sitting there watching. He said, "Oh yeah, here we go." So they wanted this stuff to happen. They did, and then finally, BA says that's enough, and they break it up. But it kind of, he's kind of thinking then, what am I doing? What are we doing? We're just like.
Amusement,
like you said, cattle. We're just like numbers to them. We mean nothing to them.
And people nowadays, they give athletes so much. I'm getting an echo. People nowadays get
What is it?
Echo? You hear echo?
I
hear echo on my side.
I don't hear it.
hear echo on my side.
Yeah. I don't hear it. You hear me echoing?
You don't hear me echoing?
Sounds good.
I don't know. I can hear an echo on my side. Maybe it's just me. But, you talk about the players that have all this power now. Now you know why they have all this power.
Yes. That's one of the things I talk about. At the end, it's so much of a difference. Can you imagine if that went on, what they did to Phil Elliott went on today? I mean, it would never happen.
Well, it's kind of you talk about the Cowboys, and this is like based on the Cowboys. The Cowboys were probably the best team in the '90s. You know what killed them? Free agency.
Yeah. Well,
but I think, you don't have your dominant teams anymore because of it. I mean, the players have all the power now.
Yeah. What killed him too was Jerry Jones getting rid of Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah.
I honestly think that if free agency hurts you guys, but I honestly think if Johnson had been there pulling the strings, he would have found pieces of the puzzle to put back in. They may not have won.
Yeah, and I think I totally agree. It was Jimmy that built those teams, not Jerry.
Definitely.
And every year proves that more and more.
Yes. So Delmore in practice, he pulls up lane. It's his hamstring. The trainer tells BA it's either popped or torn. And he said, can you get him on the field by Monday? And he does the whole, we don't know. So they start talking about trying to convince him to take a shot. And he's like, nah, I'm not going to do that. So he's putting heat on it and all this stuff, trying to do it the right way and not mess up. Game time comes around. And before the game, after that practice when Delmore got hurt, BA calls Phil to the side, tells him, look, I'm going to need you for the whole game. I need you to be ready for the whole game. And it just makes Phil's day. He's like cloud nine. He goes, tells Charlotte and all this. And they kind of have an argument about the brutality of football. And he said, this is what I do. And it goes back and forth like that. But game time comes. And Phil gets a shot.
You're doing the whole movie, huh?
Yeah.
Dang.
Phil, this is like, I love this movie too.
I know.
Phil gets his shot, and Delma's watching the whole time. And you see the look on his face, and you're like, and then you hear Coach Johnson come in and talk to Delma. And apparently, you never see it, but he convinced him to take the shot because he's in the game. And then I don't know if they did this on purpose, if L.C. Weeks is actually supposed to be L.C. Greenwood.
I have no idea who that is.
L.C. Greenwood?
Mm-mm.
Oh, yeah. You try to block that memory out of your mind. He was one of the defensive linemen for the Steelers that dominated back in.
No, Stevie, I'm not trying to block it in my mind. I'm just not a sports nut like you are.
L.C. Greenwood, I can't remember you do it.
Especially a Steeler, dude. Like, I'm going to know anything about a Steeler besides Terry Bradshaw and Mean Joe Green.
Yeah. So
I know those two.
L.C. Weeks is like the big defensive player for who are they playing? I forgot the name of the team they're playing. Chicago. And they're talking about him before the game. And Joe Bob sees a picture. Seth holds up a picture of him in the magazine. He said, I don't want his ugly to rub off on me tonight. And Joe Bob takes the page out of the magazine and eats the freaking page. And I mean, some of the encounters in the locker room were great. There's so many in there of how nerves are before the game, and guys and then the bathroom scene where they go in there. That's telltale sign there, nerves there. I'm like that before every game. If I'm not, as a coach and a player, I'm like that before every game. If I'm not, then I will not be focused, and it's not going to be good. So, but shows a lot of guys talking before the game. But then the funny part, I don't know if you noticed this or not, when the Monsignor comes in there to pray, and he goes walking through the crowd. Did you notice when they come out? Did you catch a shot of him getting like stampeded with the players when they're running out? Yeah, also you see him fly by the screen. Oh, boy.
And they're dropping a few bad words on him. And, oh, sorry.
Yeah, like take off your effing hat.
Yeah.
But then right before the game, this is where you find out that Delmer is taking the shot evidently because BA comes to the field and tells him, "You're on the bench. I'm starting Delmer." And you see Phil gets upset, goes talk to Seth, and Seth, I can't think about that right now.
Yeah.
And they flash to later on in the game, and it's not going so well. They're still in it, but it's getting near the end of the game, and they're down. And Seth drops back to pass, and there's a long pass to one of the receivers, and you see Nick Nolte over there on the sidelines like, drop it. He's pulling against his team.
Oh, pulling for himself.
Yeah, and then when he does drop it, he looks around real quick to make sure nobody saw him. That game, he finally gets his shot, and they end up going down the field, and he catches a touchdown to hopefully tie it up, send it in overtime. And precursor, Hartman is the holder, and Hartman botches the hold, and the North Dallas Bulls.
Thank you, Tony Romo.
Yep, precursor to things that's going to go on. Yeah, and you see the look on the sideline. They're all like, "Oh my gosh!" And the locker
like you
room,
see every year on Dallas' sideline.
Yeah. I think this was another precursor.
Yeah.
But in the locker room, OW ends up going off on Coach Johnson. They're talking to Delmer. Delmer looks pretty bad. That's one thing we didn't talk about too. Delmer in that game, his hamstring acts up again. After he catches a pass and he takes a terrible shot to the head. That probably would have been the guy probably would have been ejected from the game if he did a shot like that today.
Yeah, but any of those plays back then, God.
Oh yeah. But and then when LC Weeks got hurt and Joe Bob and OW set him up, that would have been some suspension there, I think. So they're talking after the game.
Bunch of pansies.
Yeah, a bunch of pansies playing today. But then you have, I guess it's the next day. Elliott has a meeting with the
big dogs,
the owners, and he looks, and BA is there too.
Have you I noticed that looking at the owners and like everybody in there, it's like, God, you talk about a bunch of 70s villains. Those guys are always bad dudes.
Dabney Coleman and
Dabney Coleman, yeah. I mean, I was watching.
His last name was Forrest.
He's in Boardwalk Empire. Who I'm watching, and dude's still alive. He's 95. He's still alive. I thought he passed a long time ago.
Dabney Coleman's 95. Yeah. Wow.
He's up there. He's 90 something.
So, what we talked about earlier with Phil feeling like he's being watched and breaking into his house. Somebody broke into his house. Yeah, he was. They give him a chance. I think the NFL director of internal affairs is there to ask him where he was at a certain night.
Smoking the grass.
And he won't answer. He said, well, why don't you tell me where I was at? And, they give him a chance to answer, and then they said, okay. So they call this guy in, and it's the guy that broke into his house who identifies himself as a police officer, and off duty he helps with internal affairs, and he has been following him since that night.
This is what kind of gets me. This is kind of a weak part of the movie. And like any kind of, somebody, cops are always fat, look like they're chasing donuts. How did you not see that guy following you? As smart as you are. I didn't think that held up too well. I was like, well, I don't know about that.
Well, let me ask you this too. Why, if that guy broke into your house,
why didn't you beat the shit out of him?
Yeah. I know he had a gun.
Call the cops. Yeah.
Call the cops.
Yeah.
Was he scared of finding the pills in his house? Could be. That's the only thing I can figure. But when he saw him, he was like, what the heck are you doing here? And I mean, he was like, and stuff comes out about he was smoking. He said he was at a party smoking a marijuana cigarette with an unidentified male companion. And he's like, what are you talking about? You know who that guy is.
Yeah.
Everybody knows who that guy is. And they all look at each other like,
he's your quarterback.
Yeah. So, and they also mentioned the whole fling with Dabney Coleman's fiance. And then when they try to mention her name, they said the owner cuts them off, says, we don't need to bring other people into this. But then they said he was with a girl named Charlotte, and that's when Phil goes off and tries to start a fight with the private investigator, I guess. And then he kind of figures then, I think, well, I'm done. And
he'd been thinking about it for a while anyway.
Oh, yeah. You could tell he had thought about it throughout the whole movie. And when he was talking about his ranch, he's talking about raising horses and all that stuff, you could tell he was thinking about it. But he starts talking to BA about, he said, are you part of this too? And BA pretty much tells him, you got the best hands in football. And I'm like, okay, I don't know about that. I think that was kind of exaggerated. That might have been something Peter Gent threw in there. But
that's probably where Meredith got it.
Yeah, exactly. He said, your immaturity is what's hurting you. And they go back and forth for a while. And it was like, he said, they don't care about us as players. And he goes through this whole spiel about we're just the equipment.
Yep.
They're the team. We're the equipment. And
that's the way a lot of them look at it. With the players is just cattle.
When he finally starts talking, they start talking about suspension. He said, heck, don't worry about suspending me. I quit. And that was it with the meeting.
What do you think they were doing that? I mean, I didn't get that part. Okay, don't say anything, but I mean, were they trying to get him to quit, trying to force him out, or trying to get him in line? I don't see the end game if he can just walk away like that.
I think they were trying to get him out because it did. I don't think one of the comments that Dabney Coleman's character made to him earlier, when he was at that other meeting about, how to speak Canadian. We got
CFL.
Yeah. And he was talking about, you've been throwing all these guys at me for years. He said, just make sure you know how to speak Canadian. And, I think they were trying to get him out. I think that's what it's boiled down to.
Like, that's a big difference, hoser.
Yeah.
You hoser? You not speak Canadian, hoser?
So he quits.
He lived happily ever after.
He walks outside and looks around for a second. All of a sudden, here's Seth. Yep, here's Seth out there with a football in his hand. And he's like, my name get brought up? He's like, no. We didn't bring your name up. It wasn't any need to bring you into it. And, talks to him a little bit about his hands again and all this stuff. And that's when the good luck on Sunday. And he said, hey, Poot, you got any of them pain pills? And evidently.
Maybe it was the Pro Bowl. They had the Pro Bowl back then?
It may have been. I don't know. It may have been. They did have the Pro Bowl, but it may have been.
Maybe it was because their season was over. It could have been the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, but okay, here's another thing that makes no sense to me. You're going to a meeting with your bosses at their headquarters. You mean to tell me you've got in your pocket a bottle of pain pills in your pocket?
It was the 70s, bro.
Jeez. He throws in the pain pills that you're going to need it. And he pretty much says he's going to go home. He's going to heal up. He's going to be with Charlotte. And
until he finds her dead. No, I was kidding. Another one.
This is in the book. So,
yeah, the book.
That's pretty much the end.
The book that wouldn't run I don't see that. Like, the guy just lost his job and you're going to fucking kill his girlfriend too. That sucks.
Yeah. That was kind of. all right, Peter Gent said he based this on football back then, but then you do that at the end, and I'm like, dude, really? Just leave it like it was. I mean,
every time you say his name, I think Peter Jennings. For some reason,
Peter Jennings.
You're not saying the whole thing, yeah.
But yeah, and they say the book was a lot more graphic. There was a lot more.
Oh yeah,
sexual stuff in it.
This was pretty. I thought this was pretty brutal. I thought this is pretty brutal. Like, I mean, I was honestly, dude, when you talked about this movie, I thought it was just going to be like a National Lampoon's type, you know, kind of satire, kind of like unnecessary roughness. Or you remember that movie? And
yeah, I remember.
Like a funny sports movie. This was pretty telling about how the NFL was.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
a lot of people. I remember hearing that a lot of people in the NFL kind of blackballed Peter Gent after that.
Oh, he was retired. He didn't care.
Yeah. So, I mean, they didn't want anything to do with him.
Well, yeah, because it's talking about their industry. It's like the wrestler. It's kind of like the wrestler with the wrestling thing, you know. A lot of these guys are dead because of the stuff I mean, not to mention CTE that goes on now.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's horrible.
And have you ever seen Dick Butkus's hands? I mean, they're like mangled, man. They're like just like mangled. It's like
the things that these guys give up. It's just like
not even for that much money.
Nick Nolte said, I mean, his character said in the movie when he was talking to BA at the end, he was like, BA was talking about giving back to the game. And he said, there's pieces of me from Fields all the way from here to Pittsburgh. He said, isn't that giving back part of giving part of to the game? And then, you know,
man, I wouldn't want any part of me in Pittsburgh, man. They probably feel the same way. They probably feel the same way about that.
Losers.
That was pretty telling, man. It was, it's like you watch those boxing movies where the guy what was that movie with the John Voight and Ricky Schroeder?
The Champ.
God, that was sad.
Yes.
Did he die in that movie?
Yes. At the end, don't you remember? Good gosh,
I haven't seen that movie in 40 years, dude.
That was one of the worst.
Oh Yeller was one of the worst.
Dude,
kill a dog.
Back now, I would tell you when I watched North Dallas 40 for the first time. This was before VHS, and I don't know if you remember these things. It was
Betamax.
No, it's for Betamax.
Reel to reel.
No, it was in between that. It was an RCA video disc.
Oh yeah,
you remember them?
Wow, I didn't have one, but I remember them.
Yeah, my brother got one. I want to say it was like a graduation.
Is that the one where you it looks like almost like an album and you just scan
it? Yeah.
Like,
you slide the thing in
But wasn't there something later on called Laserdisc? That wasn't the same thing, right?
Yeah, that was a little different, but
okay.
Video discs were pretty. We had
come up towards the mic, Stevie.
We had video disc places where you could rent video discs from around here. Before VHS.
Still do what?
No, we don't. But you look up on eBay, they still got one where you can buy them too. That's pretty cool.
I don't know, Stevie. It's funny that I probably saw Debbie Does Dallas before I saw North Dallas 40.
Yeah, you did, definitely.
That's still alive about me.
Oh, excuse me. But yeah. I
forgot about that because everything was like because Dallas was so big back then. Even though they didn't win all the time, you know, it's kind of like now.
But yeah, this was one of my top 10, and like I said, just a great movie.
This is close to the top for you.
Yeah, this was one near the top.
But see,
Dallas Cowboys. See, I don't hate everything in Texas. I do like North Dallas 40.
Yeah, but you got to see them lose at the end like you do every week, so you're happy.
I was used to that, bud. I mean, that was nothing unusual.
I'll always have the 96 Super Bowl. So that's all I got.
Yeah, Neil O'Donnell.
Oh, whatever, dude. Get over it.
Neil O'Donnell. I'm over it.
Don't mention my name, man. You better start speaking Canadian.
Yeah, you're going to have to speak Canadian. I'm going to send you to a Canadian podcast league.
I like the movie. I did. Like I said, I didn't expect it to be – I expected it to be kind of a satire, like unnecessary roughness was –
Yeah, that was a satire, yeah.
Yeah, something like that, you know, it was – because I heard it was a comedy. I didn't think this was a comedy at all. I thought this was pretty real to life.
Yeah, it was real to life.
I liked it.
I mean, it had some humor in it, but it was not a comedy.
I liked it, and I think it probably like you with The Godfather. It probably took you a little bit longer to see it.
Oh yeah,
I don't think back then I really would have understood it because I remember I saw Grease as a kid, and Grease came out a year before this. I had no freaking clue what the movie was about, but Olivia Newton-John, that was enough. So
That was pretty much enough right there.
I liked it. I really did, and actually, I want to look up the book for not
Yeah, I do too
this
now.
book, this
the
book,
more
but
I
I
look-
also want to see if the sequel that he wrote a sequel about it too. There's another one, and there's another sequel. He wrote a sequel to it.
Let me look this up right quick.
It's like
Peter
something
Gent.
on the other side of Dallas or something, or
That would be interesting to see.
yeah, there was. I think he wrote another book to it. That's what Wikipedia said. I
There's
think.
one I see called North Dallas After 40.
Yes,
A
that's
sequel.
it.
Okay, yeah, I
that's
see
it.
it.
That's the book after 40.
I wonder how that's.
Came out in like 89 or something, like 10 years later, like the book did.
So that would have been around the time that Landry was gone.
Yeah.
How interesting. He also explored the corruption of modern professional sports in a sequel volume entitled North Dallas After 40. Yep.
Wow, I actually taught you something about it. Wow, that's impressive.
Peter Gent. So, okay. So yeah, this was, like I said, one of my favorites. But
I like it. I dug it.
If you want to check it out, what you watch it on HBO Max, right?
It was on HBO Max, yeah.
Yeah, check it out on HBO Max. Drop Nick Nolte a line, tell him he did a great job. If he's still out there somewhere, where is Nick Nolte? You remember that movie he did, The Deep?
No.
I saw it
With the Abyss when they were in the water.
It was The Deep.
I used to get Nick Nolte and Gary Busey mixed up before his accident. I was like, hey, that's the next Nick. I think I was watching some movie with Gary Busey. Hey, that's Nick Nolte. And I'm like, no, that's Gary Busey. I'm like, oh, okay.
The Deep. Adventure film in 1977. Scuba diving near shipwrecks off Bermuda. Vacation couple David Sanders and Gail Burt recovered a number of artifacts, including an ample of amber-colored liquid and a medallion bearing the image of a woman. Letters.
Okay.
Gail is attacked. Okay, never mind. The Deep. That was just the first time I remember seeing Nick Nolte in a movie. But I don't know.
You were a lot more self-aware back then than I was, and I think my life was a $6 million man and maybe chips.
Well, I think this was stuff that my mom and dad would watch when it would come on. But like Jaws, I mean,
Convoy, dude. Don't you remember Convoy?
C.W. McCall. But so that's going to do it for this week. Like we said, it's a movie review. Next week, what we got going on next week, Worden? You want to talk about that?
Let them wait and see.
Okay.
Stay tuned.
We've got the next two shows lined up, and we'll have a special guest. Not next week, but the week after next. We have a very special guest next week. We'll get back into a top 10 episode. But, guys, I want to apologize because I've been, and I told Worden, I've been like kind of out of it, but I've had some stuff going on. Nothing bad going, just a lot to do around here. And
he's preparing for the Steelers' really horrible season coming up. That's what it is.
It probably will be a bad season. But
who does better, Cowboys or Steelers this year?
Cowboys will probably be better this year. It just
we'll win the division and be out in the first round as always. So
our biggest thing is quarterback. And
quarterback, they named that guy quarterback, right?
Trubisky. Quarterback, if he does good, but the biggest thing is offensive line. If our offensive line can do well, we should be better than people think.
Just hope he
Defense
avoids
is-
the whole Ben Roethlisberger rookie
Well,
year. Just saying.
Anyway, y'all just keep paying Dak all that money to lose in the first round of playoffs. So.
And you know what's sad? He's not even one of the highest paid quarterbacks anymore.
No,
I mean, it's like he's paid way too much for
people.
himself.
They use that. Well, the other quarterbacks just love to see. Like when Dak got his contract, there was a handful of quarterbacks like, okay, yeah, I wanted to see that. So y'all got to top that.
Well,
And that's what they do.
I mean, you see that massive contract Russell Wilson signed? It's still not as much as Aaron Rodgers.
Yes.
That's somebody I want to see get humbled. I don't like Rodgers.
Oh, right. Yeah, I agree with that. I thought you would say Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson's a pretty good guy.
No, Russell Wilson's okay.
So how did you?
He would have been a better Cowboy. We almost got him.
Before we let you go, how did Texas do this week?
They won 51-0 or 51-3, I guess. But they got the big dog this week.
Alabama,
dude, and they're 20-point underdogs. I don't think they'll lose by 20. But it's like I told an Aggie buddy of mine. I told a buddy of mine that's an Aggie fan, and I says, you know what? They Georgia beat them when it counted.
Yep.
And A&M's beat them. Texas, if not for a Colt McCoy injury, Alabama would have had one less national title.
Yeah, that's true. I agree with
that. I mean, that's where they play the game.
And I told my brother the same thing. He's a Texas fan. I told him the same thing today. As much as I will hate to hear the bragging that's going to come out of U2's mouth if they beat Alabama, I will take that any day just to see Alabama go down.
Well, Texas has a lot of work to do, and I'm not somebody that talks trash talk. I mean, we joke around a lot.
Yeah, oh yeah.
But I mean, Texas, they're just like the Cowboys. They're the prettiest girl with the most money, but nobody wants to date them. And it's like I have more faith in Texas Longhorns than I do, because you have boosters that actually let the coaches coach and let them run the team, unlike Jerry Jones. Texas wasn't even ranked the first week. I don't know if they're ranked now.
I don't think so.
But for a team like Texas not to be ranked, and I tell people, we don't need to worry about Bama. We don't need to worry about A&M, Georgia. We need to worry about OU, because OU still owns our ass. And I hate saying that.
Yeah,
but I think
pretty much do.
I don't think this is our year, but it would be nice. I mean, knowing how Texas is, and they'll go and they'll beat Alabama and they'll lose the UTSA the following week. It's just, I don't know. But because I got a friend of mine says, well, they're so focused on Bama, UTSA may get the win. And UTSA beats them in Austin, that's it for the coach. Unless he beats Bama.
Yeah, if he beats Bama, he's going to be pretty good for at least 2 seasons.
I hope Texas. I mean, God, they recruit well. I mean, they do really well. And it's just, you can't say the big. I mean, did you see that stuff about God? It's like Georgia. They won the title and they were still ranked 3rd behind OU, Oklahoma, Ohio State, and Bama. No respect. No respect.
Well, Georgia
beat them when it counted.
Georgia moved up to number 2 this week. They moved ahead of.
Because Ohio State had some issues there at the beginning.
Yeah, but Georgia didn't have any issues at all with Oregon.
But Texas has been real overrated a lot of years. Yeah. So they haven't. I hate to say it. I wanted Mac Brown gone because I stayed too long. But I like to think with the recruiting they're doing good. I don't know, man. I think that they'll. I don't know. I mean, anything's possible. But Nick Saban, I think he's still pissed about almost losing to us with that one year in that championship.
Yeah,
he eventually still won. He holds a grudge. He wanted to. Texas offered him $100 million at one time, and it got out. And I think that's the reason he didn't take it, is because
it got
too much blowback.
Yeah.
Who knows?
We'll see.
Who does guys? North Carolina play?
East Carolina. That's who I pull for. East Carolina played NC State.
I thought you were NC. I thought you were North Carolina.
I pull for them in basketball. Mm-hmm. Football, I'm an ECU guy.
So that's your college team?
Yeah. They played NC State, who was ranked 13th in the nation, and should have beat them. It ended up being 21-20. Our kicker, and I'm not putting the blame on the kicker, but our kicker missed the extra point that would have tied it up on the touchdown. Then ECU gets the ball back, crosses midfield, goes down. I think it was like a 30 or 40-yard field goal attempt at the end, and he missed that. That would have won the game. So, but I was surprised because even the diehard NC State fans out there said ECU outplayed them and should have won the game. So, I'm optimistic about the rest of the season, but they played well. There was two goal line stands by ECU. One at the end, 4th and 1, or 4 downs from like inside the 5-yard line, and ECU held them. And the last one was on the 1-yard line. So
sounds like the UTSA game against the University of Houston, triple overtime, and UTSA had that penalty at the end. Oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, don't sleep on UTSA beating Texas. I mean, unless I don't know, man. It's gonna be
I think y'all beat them.
It's gonna be. I mean, it's funny. I went to UTSA, but I identify as Texas. We didn't have a football team, but man, it may be a rough weekend for me, man. Get to play Mr. Tom Brady again. I mean,
yep.
As bad as the Cowboys, they break my heart. I mean, they're still freaking in prime time all the time. I mean, they know.
Well, I
think people like to watch them win and people like to watch them lose.
Exactly. There's no in between. There's people that like to watch them win and people like to watch them.
I always tell everybody that's why they're America's team, because you either like them or you hate them. There's no in between. They're like the kiss of the NFL.
Yep.
You either like them or you hate them.
All right, guys.
That's why. Just kidding.
All right, guys. That's going to do it for this week. We hope you guys enjoyed this. Check out North Dallas 40. Next week, we will have a very special episode. We'll probably be going live next week. So you guys be sure to check in and have a great week. We'll see you next week on The Fly.
See ya.